Aaron Marko with Defense in Depth. We're going to talk a little bit about Realtor Safety tips and some things we can do to keep ourselves aware during our showings, open houses, etc. You want to tell us a couple things about DID and what you do here?
Yeah, sure. So we're the state's largest indoor firearms facility down here. We have two main ranges that you can fire on, and obviously a whole host of firearms and accessories on the retail floor. But beyond that, we do a lot of training, which is probably the biggest component of that. The gear's good, you know, the equipment, that's good to have good equipment and good gear. But the big deal is knowing how to use that gear, and especially then pressure testing your skills against, you know, live energy, you know, to make sure that those skills are there. You know, it's often said, Zach, and I think it's an important concept in the training thing, that well, the body can't go where the mind hasn't been, right? You know, so having that ability to pressure test under stress and understand that under stress that we can still perform our actions well. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a good way to get us thinking. So, a few questions here. We'll start off. As realtors, as you know, citizens, how should we think in terms of safety when we're doing our jobs?
I think a good way to think about it is really apply Colonel Jeff Cooper's color codes, and that's a pretty neat concept. So if you're not familiar about that, so Jeff Cooper, I think back in the 70s when he formed the Firearms Training Academy gun site, really came up with this color codes of awareness, and a lot of state governments have actually adopted these now for their terror threat levels. So they kind of run like this roughly, and I'll just give you a quick breakdown on it, and then we'll focus on one that's really of particular importance. So you go from code white, where you're just totally unaware, you're situationally unaware and in no way ready or prepared to defend yourself or do anything in any way. And this is kind of the way you end up being, maybe laying on your couch watching TV on a Sunday, or unfortunately a lot of the way people walk around with a cell phone kind of in their face all day, and they're facing a screen or digging around in a purse or just totally not paying attention. Then you go to code yellow, and code yellow is really the big one we want to focus on. Code yellow says, today might be a day that I need to take action in order to protect myself today, right? And so then everything follows in behind that. From code yellow, we jump into code orange that says, now I've identified a particular threat, right? And now I need to pay specific attention to that. And if that threat does X, then I do Y, no questions asked. And then it goes to code red, and code red is actively engaged in some type of altercation. But code yellow is where we need to spend most of our time. And that's not like I'm paranoid, right? That's code yellow thinking is like going into a restaurant and identifying where are the exits here. If something bad happened on this side of the building, I would exit that way, right? So that's a code yellow thought process. Code yellow is getting out of your vehicle with an erect posture, taking a good 360-degree look around your environment, and walking with purpose somewhere, right? You know, so code yellow, and maybe in a realtor's context, is, well, maybe I do a little recon on whatever house I'm showing, and I know where potential additional exits are, in case something went bad in there, or maybe establishing a point of contact that says, if you don't hear from me by a certain point, I need you to call me, and if I don't answer, you need to come here, right? So those are some of the code yellow kind of things that we can do in that way.
That sounds good. Today we take pictures. Maybe we've showed it a couple times already, but during that situation, we were maybe focused on the photos, our clients, the sellers, rather than, you know, where's a door, where's a window. So that's some good pointers on definitely making ourselves aware, making a mental map.
Well, it gives you the ability to be proactive, right? And that's a lot of times when we talk about self-defense, right? When we say self-defense, it really puts us in a reactive state. I think that's a reactive mindset, and that's why I really prefer to say self-protection, because then we can begin to be proactive, and especially places that I would call habitual spaces, or spaces that we maybe go to frequently. Like if you've shown this house a couple of times, that has given you an opportunity to pre-establish some avenues of egress, like if I have to get out quickly, if I had to get out on the second floor, what window has maybe a roof underneath of it, of an enclosed porch or something that would give me access. It just gives us that ability to make a plan, and they often said, right, a bad plan's better than no plan.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely, that's a good point. So outside of that, making ourselves mentally aware, what are some tools that maybe we can use to protect ourselves in the homes and in situations?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of tools. Well, first of all, our best tool that we have is right between our ears. Our mind is our biggest tool. So if we're not engaged mentally, then all the other tools are irrelevant, right? So the concept I think that is best is it's better to avoid than it is to de-escalate. It's better to de-escalate than it is to fight, and it's better to fight than it is to die. And if we kind of unpack those down, through there. So if you said, well, it's better to avoid than de-escalate, it's clear, I think, pretty easy concept to say that I cannot avoid something I'm unaware of, right? So awareness has got to be that first key, and you can pound that all the way home because that's probably the biggest concept. Awareness will buy us time, and time will buy us options, right? That's those kind of thought processes. The sooner I can recognize the threat, the sooner I can respond to the threat. Or I can avoid the threat, whatever my response may be at that point in time, so that's important. But as far as it goes to tools, I think really, so I'm an advocate of firearms. Not everybody is cut out or ready to possess and carry a firearm, especially in a public environment.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. Besides that, I think pepper spray is one of the biggest key support items you could have out there. It's a force multiplier. With about a 15-foot distance of use, and I can truly deal with more than one person at one time with it. That's fantastic. And for people that own firearms like me, I carry a firearm pretty much every day. I always carry pepper spray as well, because if I can solve the problem without the gun, then that's even better, right? So the last thing, well, if we've ever said as firearms owners, the last thing I ever want to do is shoot somebody. Well, what other options do you have, right? You got to ask yourself that question. Along with that, I think a personal alarm is really a great idea, something you can pull, it draws a lot of attention. The last thing people like this want is a fight. They want something easy, right? So a personal alarm, if it's in a place that can be heard from somebody, could be effective. And I really think tactical flashlights are another really good tool to have around for a multitude of reasons. But I think the mind is got to be the biggest one, and that's really what we need to focus on first. So many times we want to focus on gadgets.
Yeah, so that's great information. And now talking in terms of the gadgets and handling them, what does Defense in Depth offer, as an individual, maybe as a group, to learn how to use some of the pepper spray, the gun, etc.?
Yeah, so we have a whole lot of training programs. That's really the wheelhouse here. The live fire range is a great thing to come here and actively engage and use your skills, but the training is the big part here. So we offer live fire training in several different ways. Several group classes. We have a fundamentals of concealed carry that really focuses on draw, presentation, multiple shot strings of fire. We have fundamentals of home defense for people who say, hey, I want to use a gun to defend my home, but I don't want to carry one in public. Mm-hmm. So that focuses on the elements of a home defense plan and how to use one efficiently in the context of a home invasion scenario. We have private training. If you didn't want to jump into a live fire class, there's a lot of intimidation that comes along with going out, especially if you don't have great familiarity with a firearm. And so having that ability to come in and get one-on-one private training to get you up to speed, and then you can jump into that. But beyond the firearms classes, that's just a portion of it. We do an alternative force options class that talks about, support tools to a firearm, but maybe instead of a firearm, like unarmed skills. Another really key aspect is how to defend myself without a tool, right? Because a lot of times a fight, even if you are carrying a tool of self-defense, the fight is likely to be physical before it goes to lethal, right? So that escalation of force. Do I have a basic understanding or concept of striking and defeating certain grabbing attacks? We have a beautiful women's assault prevention and response course that focuses on threats that are primary to women in particular. And we just have a whole host of classes, and we're always adding new classes to the catalog as we go along. So, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff we have to offer.
That's excellent. Well, I think we'll get ready to wrap up here. If anybody wants more information on this, where can they find that?
Well, we certainly get us on the World Wide Web. We're available there, and you can certainly stop in and see us anytime if you have any questions. We're down here at 1389 Saberton, down in the Saberton Plaza, and come down and see us.
All right, good deal. Well, thanks, Aaron.
All right, brother.
All right.